I'm joined today by Ross Veitch, who's the co-founder and CEO of Wego. Ross, thank you for joining us.
Hey, Ray. Great to be with you.
So there's a lot to talk about here today, and you've been through a quite tough last year and a half since COVID started. Is for anyone who's in the travel business, you've been hit quite hard. So I'm really wanting to hear about that, and I think there's a lot of learnings over there. But first, I would love to hear more about your story, your background. You're probably break the record for the longest serving entrepreneur in a single startup. You started in 2005, so 16 years. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so we always joke, Wego's our decade-long overnight success story. So 2005, so Craig and I, my co-founder, we started kicking around ideas for Wego. We're inspired by some of the early travel meta search players coming out of the US. And I had a bit of exposure to travel. I did a couple of years for tourism in Australia, long time ago, sort of running strategic planning analysis. And then while I was at Yahoo building their products for the Asia region, travel was one of the verticals we built out. It was something I took a liking to. I was doing a lot of traveling myself. There's all these low-cost carriers coming to Asia. There's no way to shop them all. There's nothing like Expedia for the region. I thought, travel meta, that's something I'd like to use. Seemed to be a pretty good business model, better mousetrap. So I thought somebody should bring it to the rest of the world. And so, 2005, we kicked it off. With the benefit of hindsight, we're probably 5-6 years too early with the model for the region we were initially tackling.
And that's the Southeast Asia region you're referring to, yeah?
Yeah, so I sort of come to Singapore to help set up Yahoo's operations in the region back during the first .com boom, and sort of cut my teeth running product engineering teams for them and sort of doing business development all across Southeast Asia. So that's kind of what I knew, like Southeast Asia, Hong Kong, India. And we originally thought Southeast Asia was the target market. That took a lot longer than we originally thought it would. And rather than wait for the market to develop, we went global. And but part of the some of the markets that really took off were in the Middle East. So we localized. We did 60 countries, 20 plus languages, including Arabic. We did the right to left. And just organically it started growing. And then we started paying attention. We realized there was a big untapped market, primarily around the Gulf. So at the time, adoption looked a lot like emerging market levels, but the unit economics were really quite good. So people were had relatively high incomes. They're traveling a lot, so high frequency. Basket sizes were quite high. And so we started to focus, spend a lot of time in the region, meeting new business partners, meeting all the airlines, all the online travel agencies, the hotel chains that we help people shop. We set up in the Dubai Internet City, got quite a big office there now, and effectively we're dual headquartered, Dubai and Singapore. We run product and engineering, data science out of Singapore, and we run the commercial marketing side of the business out of Dubai.
And when you started, what was a pre-mobile area? Like how would you get started on a travel meta search pre-mobile era? And how did you win your first 100 customers?
Yeah, so when we first kicked it off, it was all desktop web. Mobile web was barely a thing yet. Native apps had not yet launched, so I think the iPhone came out around that time, and it was it was all effectively web apps, within the Apple environment back then. So desktop game, and so our business model, at least when we first started, was that of a travel meta search. It's a pure meta search business, which is you can think of it as a marketplace. So we got users on one side looking to purchase travel products. On the other side, we've got our suppliers and online travel agencies, and we help shop them all. And like any marketplace business, you've got a chicken and egg problem, right? So nobody wants to work with you on the supply side until you can bring the demand. And we kind of got around this by white labeling our platform into all the big horizontal portals of the day. So we worked with Yahoo, we worked with MSN, a whole bunch of local equivalents, tourism boards, anybody who needed a travel vertical, and that brought the demand. And then once we had the demand, the supply was sort of fairly easy, and we got it up to a critical mass that way.
That's interesting. Yeah, a lot of startups have this problem initially when starting, like you have the chicken and egg problem. So was it like a plugin that you would integrate as part of MSN or Yahoo at that time, which is, again, it's a pre-mobile kind of like era? Was it that what you're doing?
Yeah, well, so we had a few different flavors of integration, but what typically worked would we'd set up a subdomain, travel.msn or .com, etc. That would point at our servers. We'd figure out how to make it look like their website. Basically, take care of it all for them. We also have APIs available, but typically, a lot of partners prefer to just take care of it. So it's sort of a bespoke white label.
So on a product level, like when mobile came into play, how did you? What was kind of your product vision? How did that evolve in terms of the product and your strategy, kind of like within the change that was taking place?
Yeah, so so it was pretty clear that native apps gave you a superior product experience from a client perspective versus the web, at least in the early days. I think it's a bit more of a balance these days with progressive web app technology. Often it's hard to tell what you're actually, what the underlying framework is or code base. But so we lent into mobile apps, native apps quite early. Tried a few different approaches to development until we found a formula that worked. We tried asking our web guys to learn it. That wasn't ideal. We tried sort of doing the designs internally, the back end stuff internally, and sort of outsourcing the front end work. That didn't work great. And then eventually we hired a bunch of guys who'd spent years in the gaming industry, and we asked them to have a crack at e-commerce with us, and that worked really well. So the gaming guys pushed the platform, the hardware to the edge, and so for them e-commerce and what we wanted them to do was relatively easy. But
what do you think it was the gaming guys that figured it out?
I mean, so if you're optimizing your if you're trying to build something real time 3D with somebody else's gaming engine, it's a lot more complicated, a lot more nuanced than trying to build e-commerce flows. So anyway, that worked for us. A lot of our mobile devs are actually from Pakistan, so they've sort of cycled through our team in Singapore. A lot of them are actually have moved back to Pakistan, and rather than have them leave the company, they've set up our office over there now. So we just opened our R&D center in Lahore. And if there's any awesome devs who happen to be sitting in Lahore looking for a new opportunity, hit me up. We're hiring.
And how do you go about like organizing your on a product level, your tech team that's kind of decentralized? Like you said, you have different devs in different cities, and compared to where you came from originally back in you're doing product at the Yahoo days back in 2005. So how does that compare today to how you manage your sprints and you manage your product and get and ship features to market?
Yeah, so I was actually doing product management for Yahoo back in the 90s, right? So it's sort of dating me. But back in the day, we didn't have real-time video, or we did, but it wasn't very good. So effectively, remote teams weren't ideal. So be using mailing lists and conference calls to manage teams. So it's very different today. Today Wego runs on Slack. We've got proper Zoom rooms set up in all the offices. We've got using all the Atlassian suite, to fairly deep. And we've got developers spread across Singapore, KL, Bangalore, Lahore, Jakarta, and it works quite well. We have there's like stand-ups every day, via Zoom. It's a lot easier now than it was a decade ago.
Yeah, definitely. And how do you go about, like, a lot of founders struggle with feature setting priorities for when it comes to features and what feature to ship first, and especially when, very similar to you, you're competing with a lot of big players who have bigger teams, a lot more cash, but you need to keep shipping. So what's your methodology as a founder for prioritization when it comes to features and what you should keep, what you should build, what you should kill? How do you go about that?
Yeah, good question. So we're just a little under 200 people worldwide, which is relatively small compared to some of the global giants in the online travel space who have 5,000-10,000 people. So that forces us to be ruthless when it comes to prioritization and what we choose to do or what we choose not to do. The way our planning cycle works, we've got a sort of a vision for what we're trying to build. Every year we sort of there's a couple key things we absolutely have to get done, sort of a strategic focus, and then sort of hanging out of that we have quarterly product plans. Typically around the middle of the quarter, we'll be locking in what's going to happen the following quarter. So our VP product has first crack at that with his lieutenants, and then the senior leadership team debates it, and there's a fair bit of horse trading that goes on. So we try to be reasonably nimble, but we have resources fixed to particular business units, and they tend to stay there within the course of a year. And then as we're doing our annual planning, that's typically when the resources get reallocated. That said, things like COVID happen. It just throws everything up in the air, and you sort of
we'll get to that. We'll get to that in a bit. And how do you kind of, like, when it comes to customers and features, how do you set up your feedback loop with customers to get feedback on what features? So before you get to that, quarterly kind of planning or the vision that you have for each quarter, where do customers, or what have you set up in place before and now? Because obviously you've also evolved from being a smaller company to a much bigger company, in terms of listening to what customers want and understanding what customers want in terms of features.
Yeah. So for better or worse, our customers are really not shy about telling us when they like or dislike something. So we spend a lot of time going through the App Store reviews, going through the social media channels. We run a lot of surveys asking people for feedback. There's different hooks in the website and the app where we're prompting people for feedback. That said, when it comes to sort of big picture product prioritization, I think often people don't know what they want until they see it. It's hard we're a little bit top down when it comes to the sort of big picture product strategy stuff. One thing I'm trying to be a bit more ruthless about is before we greenlight new products or new features or initiatives, like figuring out what are the metrics we're going to use, and how are we defining success or failure, and then making sure we sort of loop back on it. And if you go back a few years, we had a bad habit of just like knocking stuff out making sure we got through the product plan, not necessarily going back and make sure it was a good use of resource and we achieved what we were supposed to. Or sort
That's
of
very difficult to do. Do you have an example of how do you usually do that in terms of, because that's very difficult to do for any company, going back and having the right metrics and checking if you did the right thing or not.
Yeah, so I think we're probably a bit more data obsessed than most online companies. So we built our own in-house analytics system. We spend a lot of time looking at different cohorts, sort of behavior over time. But we sort of institutionalizing those retrospectives. So making sure anything that we spend a significant amount of resource on, we take the time to go back and do a retrospective, and if need be, to go back and have another crack at it. And it doesn't really matter if we succeed or fail, but if we don't learn something from the exercise, that's when I'm really pissed. So ideally, it works well. It's a success, but at the very least, we need to figure out why it didn't go to plan.
What happened? We need to know what happened. To jump a little bit on growth and marketing. So at the beginning phase, you mentioned that, kind of one way for you to grow and to figure out the chicken and egg problem when you first started was to utilize platforms such as MSN and Yahoo and others and doing this white label. After a post-mobile kind of, and let's say after 2010, when SEO and SEM and App Store rankings and all of these things came into play, how did your strategy shift there, and what are some of the growth hacks or tactics that you did in order to get customers, and maybe like one or two things that you've done that really worked for you guys?
Sure. So we took our original partner model for the web and sort of found a way to migrate that to the mobile app game. So got great partnerships with Huawei and Samsung. They both preload Wego in a whole bunch of different countries. Got good relationships with Apple and Google on the dev side. So we sort of found over the years, if you find out what's important to them and look for the intersection between what they're trying to promote and what we're trying to build, if you can get in there and build something early, they're delighted to go out and tell people about it, which is good for us, good for them. We've, I think somewhat unusually, we built we have a data science team, but we also have a marketing technology team whose job it is to just make sure we're at the cutting edge of everything you can do with tech. So the intersection of marketing and technology, and I think that's served us well. They spend a lot of time studying the Chinese market. So I think for anything mobile, China's always a great reference. So we do that on both the product and the marketing side. So that's worked well. We've got a great partnership with the NBC group. So we got to know them when we started spending time in the Gulf. They're actually a shareholder of Wego now, and being quite instrumental in helping build the brand, tell the story, reach a broader group right across their satellite footprint. So happy to say today when we run our dipstick brand awareness surveys every quarter, we're right up there with our friends at Booking.com in terms of brand awareness in the online travel space all over the Middle East.
Was that partnership before they became a shareholder, or was it after?
So we got to know them beforehand. We'd run some TV with them. We're experimenting with trying to run TV advertising on a performance basis. So trying to run spots looking for the immediate impact and optimizing the media schedule. So we tinkered around with that, and then we just sort of cut to the chase and brought them in as a shareholder. They've been great partners for us.
Makes me think of a question there. How important or how much does TV still work today in the Middle East or Southeast Asia for a B2C company like you guys?
I think it depends on the audience you're trying to attract. So the product that you're trying to sell or promote, and then how you use it, right? So different stages of development, you're trying to do different things with your marketing strategy, right? So if you're trying to establish your brand, and the people who consume your brand, target for your product, are consuming TV, then it's a good fit. As long as you do something smart with your media buy and your creative. Keep in mind, NBC now, there's a big digital part to the platform as well, right? So it's
with Shahid and the other,
but I think TV is still very relevant. I see all the big digital brands in most part of the world are hammering away at TV.
How do you track conversion? How do you go about tracking conversion when you run a TV campaign or an outdoor campaign? What's your is it like with a promo code, or do you focus a lot on trying to figure out how much was your cost of acquisition for a TV campaign or an outdoor campaign?
Yeah, so it's a great question. So we've tried a bunch of different strategies over the years. There's actually a whole bunch of people who do nothing else but TV analytics for e-commerce companies now. The general gist is to look for to get the data telling you which spot ran on which channel, exactly which time, and then look for correlations in real time activity on your site, so app downloads, sessions, and then sort of you're working on the assumption that the short-term impacts from the direct response are proportional to the longer-term brand impacts, so the things are going to drive lifetime value, and you can tease that out over time, but you then sort of optimize your media buy to drive that short-term response. That's the gist of it. And then you do multivariable regression over a longer time to see how what your TV drove versus your SEM or your other activities.
How long did it take you to figure out your metrics, from your lifetime value to your cost of acquisition and other things? I mean, probably it's a continuous process, but when did you reach a stage where you felt that, from the day you started, that you felt that, you have a good grasp on your customer metrics?
Yeah, I mean, so in many ways, we're still figuring some of that stuff out. There was a real shift when we moved the focus from the web to the native apps. Ability to track. So our platform, we've never forced people to register. So there's you're relying on cookies and the same browser in order to look at people longitudinally, and that was tough on the web. So we used to focus more on same session arbitrage. Moving to the native apps, it was so much easier to look at users over the full lifetime value, and then to start doing proper cohort analysis. So it was really the platform difference. And then so what we do now, we look at the different ways we're acquiring users, the different channels, the different campaigns, and then look for short-term signals that are predictive of lifetime value. And then when we see something that resonates, we go back and double down on that. If something's under, we cut it, find something else to do. So that's sort of the basis of our acquisition strategy now.
And when it comes to your expansion to other markets, I know you touched a little bit on your expansion to the Middle East. How do you go about that, and what was your kind of first touch point with the Middle East, and how did you decide to because you started in Southeast Asia, and you're now in 60 countries, so when you want to expand from one country to the other and coming into and establishing big base in the Middle East initially, how did that come about? What was your kind of thinking, and what drove you to focus on this market?
So Southeast Asia was taking too long. So we decided to go global. I basically got a list of users who were on the internet at the time, users who were projected to be on the internet 5 years from now, by country, by language spoken. I think we drew a line under the 95th percentile and said, we'll support everything above that line that was any significant size. And so, we localized for a bunch of countries in the MENA region, and we did Arabic. It just started to take off organically, and then we started pouring fuel on the fire and localizing the product properly. Started spending a lot of time in Dubai and around the Gulf, and then progressively we moved more and more functions into our Dubai office, to the point we're now effectively dual headquartered. The Arabian travel market was it's always been a great event for us. So we turn up on that en masse. We see hundreds of different partners over the course of the week, just like meetings, bang, 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 bang. So that's a great event. So the Middle East now drives more than half of our total business. We also have decent presence in India, Pakistan. Turkey's a nice market for us, expanding down into Africa. Southeast Asia is still significant, but the Middle East is really the core of the business and where we spend the focus from a sort of brand building point of view. That's the part of the world we track the most closely.
Well, what are the things that you look for? This is something that, especially in our part of the world, most startups, because of the way the geography is, and it's not one big country like the US or other markets. So from very early on, most founders need to start thinking about expanding into new markets. I need to go into Saudi, even if I'm, not just the Middle East is not one market. It's many different markets, many different behaviors, many different audiences. So if I'm in the UAE, very early on, I'm going to need to start thinking about expanding into Saudi, expanding into Egypt. And I've spoken with a lot of founders who each have different kind of ways they go about this. What do you look for when you want to go into a new country? If you want to go into Turkey or Pakistan or KSA, what is your checklist that you go through? Is it more the gut feeling that you feel that you need to be in a certain market, or more of a data-driven kind of like checklist that you go through before you decide to deploy resources to go after a certain country?
Yeah, so fortunately our business model is relatively light, so we can move in with only a limited amount of investment. But what we're looking for is critical mass of people who are traveling and booking their travel online. Fairly simple. We also need partners to sign up and to participate in the marketplace. So airlines and hotel chains who've got their e-commerce game together, and then we need online travel agencies who are interested in those markets. So either global or regional guys or local guys. And fortunately for the Middle East, we've got a great mixture of both. So we're looking for partners. We need to sign them up, integrate them. Need to make sure the product's properly localized for each country. And actually, we sort of take it down to each city. So if you're sitting in Riyadh, you're getting a different Wego experience than if you're sitting in Jeddah. So we look at the data mine, the travel preferences and behaviors for every key metro. And then next step is actually to personalize it. So you will have a different experience on Wego than the person living in the apartment next door. Once we get to know you and sort of profile you a little bit. So that's something we're working on at the moment. It's a bit of a holy grail for travel. You go along to a travel conference, everybody talks about product personalization.
Yeah.
Play with the apps, and it's like they're all pretty much identical experience. So we're actually trying to do something about it at the moment.
Well, what kind of tech have you built in place to kind of automate or create more personalization within your product?
So it's sort of one of the projects that we've invested in during some of the quieter months because of COVID. So we been boiling down a lot of the data we've collected from all our users over the years, and building individual personas, profiles that we can then use to personalize the experience. So if every time you're using Wego, you've got a preference for Jumeirah hotels, we'll make sure that Jumeirah's at the top of your, we're merchandising them to you when you're searching for a new destination. If you go into London, there's a Jumeirah hotel, it'll be top of the results. If you always book low cost, we'll start preferencing that for you. If it's a hotel you've stayed in before, we'll make sure you see that one. If you're typically traveling for business, if we see you, on the plane to Riyadh every Sunday morning and coming back every Thursday, we'll make it easier. McKinsey special. Doing smart things like that, and I think the guys at Kareem do a great job of this. So taking a few tricks out of their bag, their book. So a couple of clicks to get repetitive repeat bookings done. If every time you run a set of flight searches, you choose the same filters, you shouldn't have to do it, every time, right? We should just do it for you automatically. Stuff like that.
In around March 2020, when was the day that you first realized that like we're in trouble? There's the next phase is going to be different than the previous phase.
Yeah, so I've been tracking COVID all the way, actually pretty early. I was sort of watching what was going on in China in January. I thought we might have dodged the bullet until it really started hitting Iran. As soon as Iran got hit, I kind of knew the rest of the Middle East was going to have a problem as well. In March, we went from sort of like making about $3 million a month over the course of I think 2 weeks. It was down to almost nothing. We did about $50,000 in our worst month, and that was when all the planes got parked in the desert, the airports got padlocked, and everybody was locked down. So that was pretty extreme halt to business. And we sort of had to make a decision. So travel companies, tackled this in two ways. So some of them, sacked 3/4 of the team and hibernated. We took a somewhat different approach. We cut all the marketing immediately. We asked all the staff to take some pay cuts. We'll cut the cash component. We made up for it in stocks. Everybody who works at Wego is now a shareholder of Wego. And we doubled down and sort of invested in product development. So we thought, we want to keep the team together and do everything we can so that when people start traveling again, we come out the other side stronger than when we went into it, so we can take share. We also kept the we kind of switched the content marketing strategy. So pre-COVID, it was very inspirational, very Instagram-friendly stuff. During COVID, people's main, so we switched over to sort of an information needs strategy, so helping people figure out where they can go, the logistics, tests involved, is it open, is it closed, who's it open to, how long's the quarantine. So a lot of that. So did a lot of social media, kept that going flat out all through COVID, just trying to keep people engaged. And it seems to be working. So now, our Middle East business is back to about 35-40% of what it was pre-COVID. But interestingly, it's all coming back organically. We still haven't really cranked up the marketing machine. And when we've still been running the brand dipstick tracking all the way through. And the brand's as strong as it was going into it. So it's been a rough year and a half. I won't lie to you. But we can see the light at the end of the tunnel now. I think the approach we've taken will bear. It's going to pay off. Like the business coming out of COVID is going to be a lot more profitable than it was going into it, just because of all the changes we've been forced to make.
That you made. And how do you, I know it's very difficult to kind of go through, like, in terms of like predicting things that are out of your control. How did you see going through it, like month by month? How did you just waiting for kind of travel to come back and people to book, or were you going after certain markets as they open or certain segments as they open? How would you navigate that between? So we spoke about kind of like more the cost part, but on the revenue part, is you're trying to drive your revenue back up again, and still probably, same thing as today, as you're still around kind of like 30%, 40% in certain markets. What has been your approach within that, or certain things that you've seen in the travel market that are coming before others?
Yeah, so look, spent a lot of time just trying to figure out what on earth is going on with regulations, what's happening with government policy. We've got models to predict, what we think will happen with government policy. And we've got all the case data, the infection rates. So we've got our own models sort of showing what's happening around the world. And we've got a pretty good handle on what we think is going to happen in each country. So we've been able to forecast it reasonably well. But I got to tell you, I'm sick of having to monitor and track COVID stats. It's like it's really not what I signed up for when we started this business. But what we've seen is every time an international route opens up, there's an immediate step change response. There's so much pent up demand for travel for all sorts of purposes. Like, a lot of people haven't seen their family for 18 months. So as soon as that becomes possible, we see a lot of people taking advantage of that. We've seen a lot of business travel coming back, which is sort of goes against what I keep reading coming out of the US, that nobody's ever going to step foot on a plane again for business purposes. But we're seeing a lot of people going to see clients and partners that they haven't seen for a long time. My personal thesis on that is in the Middle East and Asia, a lot of business is done face to face, and I think it will continue to be. We'll augment it with video conferencing, but I think that's coming back, most of it. And then leisure. I mean, a lot of people have had a really rough year, So, like at the moment, you're in Dubai, but it's practically empty. Like our offices, like everybody's gone.
Everybody wants to go on a vacation. Yeah,
everybody's on vacation. Like. We had our leadership meeting on Monday, and there's like 2 people in the Dubai office on the call. So so everybody's traveling as soon as they get the chance, and our surveys tell us we're in for something of a boom as soon as it's physically possible and the quarantines go away. Like, nobody's going to travel with quarantines. Like, you only travel if you really have to under those circumstances. But as soon as people,
do you think there's going to be a supply problem with in the short term, like it's happening now with the automotive industry or some industry, like as things start to, you're saying like a spike? Do you see a supply problem that's going to take place?
So I think it's important for governments who are setting the policies to give the travel industry, a couple of months heads up, or at least to telegraph the framework around which the decisions are going to be made so that we can anticipate it. Because if you've got a fleet of airlines and they've been parked in the desert for 6 months, it takes some time to get them reconditioned and to get your pilots back into the simulator to make sure they're ready to fly again. And there's a lot of other stuff that has to happen. So possibly, but
staffing as well, right? So it brings staff back.
Correct. I mean, there's a lot of hotels around the world really struggling to properly staff their operations at the moment, just because they rely on foreign labor. Or in some of the Western markets, the wage subsidies are at the point where it doesn't make sense to actually go and work. So that'll go away soon enough, I think. But if there are supply issues, they'll be short term. Most important thing is the demand is there. Like, it's really, really clear. Take Saudi. So Saudi's our biggest market, so we spend a lot of time studying it. So policy as of this week is you're not allowed to travel unless you're double vaccinated. So I think at the moment...
Double vaccinated? What does that mean? Is that like...
2 shots.
The 2 shots. Okay.
Previously, 1 was enough. I think with Delta, they're erring on the side of caution, so they're making sure you get your 2nd shot. It's got to be 2 weeks to make sure it's taken effect. So I think they're still under 50%. But anyway, as the rest of the population gets vaccinated, they're suddenly going into the market that can actually travel again. And for the UAE, right, as soon as rest of Europe figures out how to recognize Sinopharm, it's going to open up the range of destinations. Anyway, so there's a lot of friction that needs to still be removed from the process.
But generally, you're optimistic about the whole space, the travel space.
Yeah, so we've been doing scenario planning all through this. So rather than sort of trying to pick a number and manage to that, we sort of pick a range of scenarios and sort of make sure we're going to be fine within any of them, try and figure out leading indicators for where we're at. But our baseline is that by the end of this year, we'll be back to 2019 levels.
End of this year?
End of this year, maybe a little below. We'll see. Yeah, ask me back in January.
Do you have any exciting plans for there's both the Expo later this year and then the World Cup as well in Qatar after that? Do you guys have any special plans that you have for what's coming next?
Yeah, so we've I don't think we've announced this yet. We've got a deal in place with Dubai Expo 2020. So we'll be selling tickets for them, making sure everybody who uses Wego around the world knows that Expo is happening and how to get there, where to stay, what to see. I think the season passes are going to be pretty compelling if you live in the UAE. They're expecting everybody to go multiple times. So we'll be selling those in the UAE. I'm looking forward to getting there myself. It's been many years since I went to an expo. The World Cup, I don't think we've got a deal in place yet, but if there's one to be had, we'll definitely be in line for it.
Do you think a lot of people are going to fly around the Gulf for the World Cup, like spend the night in Dubai and then go watch a game in Qatar and come back?
I wouldn't be surprised. Got to make, we need all of the, some of the friction we've added from the COVID health requirements to go away to make that sort of thing a bit more practical.
Easier.
But if you think back a few years, there was a shuttle flight, Dubai Doha every 30-45 minutes, right? So that would make sense. And it'd be good, spread the benefit of the World Cup around the Gulf. I think it'd be good for the GCC.
Yeah, because generally the World Cup happens historically usually happens in a much bigger kind of geographic area where you actually have people flying from one city to other to watch the games. It's the first time it all happens in a very small geographic area, but it might not be enough to host everyone sleeping there. So they're gonna have to go sleep somewhere else.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I guess we've got time, but it would be kind of cool if it was shared around between the GCC countries and those matches played across the region.
Yeah.
A bit like when Japan and Korea hosted it jointly a while ago.
Yeah, exactly. I want to talk a little bit about fundraising. What was your journey? How much time have you spent on fundraising versus running the business since you started? You've raised about 65 million to date, so that's a lot of fundraising to do. I think you're in like your Series A, so you've raised a lot of rounds. So you're a veteran kind of like fundraiser. What are some of the things you went through, tips you'd give to other founders when it comes to that?
Yes, I mean, we bootstrapped for the first 2 years. So the first $2 million came out of our own pockets. So it's becoming a very expensive hobby before we brought in external capital.
It's a lot. This is definitely a very expensive hobby.
Yeah. I mean, one piece of advice I give to first-time founders is like, think hard about the capital requirements for your first startup. Unless you're born into a wealthy family, or you've for some reason had a windfall, try and pick something which is not too capital intensive first time out, so that you don't have to spend all your first couple of years trying to raise money. So you can focus on the product, customers. Ideally you want to bootstrap. Not every business model lends itself to that, but it's worth just making sure you know what you're getting yourself in for. I think the days when you can, like I do a lot of angel investing, and the days when people are prepared to fund a business plan without a product, I think are kind of over. There's really no excuse for not building your version 1 or your MVP before you go out and fundraise these days. I think get organized. So if you're out there fundraising, you're going to meet a lot of people. You're probably going to do it again in a few years, and you'll do it again a few years later. So keep track of all the conversations you've had. I mean, simple stuff, but you get into a process. You start doing a lot of meetings, meeting a lot of people. It's hard. It's very easy to lose track of. So get organized, track every interaction, and follow people, right? Because people move around between funds. There's some good tools around for helping to automate that process.
What are some of the tools?
You can ask that. I can't remember the name of it. I haven't done it for a while, but I've got a lot of our. It's a bit like CRM for fundraising, built for founders.
So you organize, and then by tracking, you mean between round and the other, you have meetings, catch-ups. How do you keep in touch with what was your approach other than staying organized?
Yeah, so keep track of who you talk to, when you talk to them. What was the outcome from the the interaction. But ideally, anybody you've had any meaningful reaction with, try and keep in touch. Find a reason to keep them updated on the business. So if you build some sort of CRM for yourself. It doesn't have to be complicated, but keep track of it, because you will spend a lot of time on it. It's a huge waste if you don't, because you're just not going to remember, particularly if it's over multiple years.
Yeah, there's a lot of amazing simple like Notion or Airtable. I think are great for kind of keeping things organized and being able to track things. They have good trials. What was your hardest round from all different rounds you've done? What was the toughest one?
So we had to do we had to raise some. We had to do some convertible debt a couple months into COVID. Like we had a bit of a rainy day fund, but it wasn't really optimized for a complete full stop of the business. So trying to raise money for a travel business in the first few months of a global pandemic, high degree of difficulty. So we got it done, but it wasn't easy. Unfortunately, smart people looking through COVID, realizing there's an opportunity. So if COVID doesn't knock a company over, it's going to make them stronger, in the travel space. And if you look at all the publicly traded online travel companies, interestingly, they're all trading above where they were, pre-COVID. It's basically They've all been forced to do stuff they probably should have done anyway. They found all sorts of efficiencies in their business, so they're going to be significantly more profitable coming out of it. It's good for us too.
There's no doubt that everyone wants to travel, so I think that will come back very quickly when everyone can do that again. What is next for Wego?
So one of the things we did when everybody was locked at in their home city and couldn't travel, we had a look around and thought, what else could we build that sort of leverages the user base, the app install base we already had, and we created a new product called Shop Cash. So it's a cashback shopping service. It exists as a standalone brand and app to Wego, but it's also in the process of being integrated into Wego. So it'll be a loyalty program if you're a Wego user, so you can earn and burn on travel, but you can also earn cashback shopping at Amazon or at Noon or any one of hundreds of other merchants on the platform. So that's actually taken off quite nicely. So we think that's got huge. There's companies running the same model in US, Europe, Russia, LATAM, Asia, $1 billion plus valuation. So we think there's a lot of potential for that in the Gulf.
Is it integrated as part of Wego, or is that a standalone product?
Today it's standalone, but it's very shortly it'll be properly integrated. So it's in the App Store today, Shop Cash. If you live if you have a GCC account. The other thing we've been doing through COVID is making our platform more transactional. So a lot of people have. In the past, you'd come to Wego, shop the market, we'd send you somewhere else to book. And we weren't really in control of the experience, so we sent you off to somebody else's booking platform. So now we've built a lot more transactional capabilities into Wego itself, so that we have end-to-end control over the experience. So as part of that, we've had to integrate a whole bunch of payment gateways, fraud protection services, a whole bunch of B2B supplier partners, and to spend a lot of time sort of tinkering with the checkout path, a lot of A/B tests. So we've been quite busy during COVID, I think it's fair to say.
Have you integrated a buy now, pay later that's been growing a lot in the region for the past few months?
Yeah, watch this space coming soon. But yeah, we've seen it. It's a no-brainer for travel. We see it working really well in other parts of the world. Actually, Brazil really pioneered this with travel to the point where travel products, if you're looking for a flight, it's not quoted in terms of the total flight price. It's quoted in terms of the 12 monthly installments.
Interesting.
Everybody does, yeah.
So that's how they all book.
Yeah.
Amazing. Ross, we've reached the end of the conversation. This was amazing. If people want to find more about you or follow you and Wego, where are you most active? Where should they follow you on?
So you can hit me up on LinkedIn. You can email me at Ross@Wego. I'm not very active on Twitter. I sort of consume it more than I contribute to it, but email is probably the best place, or get somebody to introduce you.
Amazing. Thank you very much for joining us. This has been great.
Thanks, Ray. Appreciate it.
Thank you for listening to this episode. If you like this podcast and want to listen to more episodes, subscribe to the Maté Conversations podcast on one of your favorite podcast channels.